Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 41 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Okay, our faceted cross project is progressing really well. We've got everything's in pretty good shape at this point. I do want to point out a couple of details about how this is being laid out. And I will try to get a little better video as we go along. I'll draw some lines on here just to show you, to help clarify. Right here, the line that I drew on the stone is almost exactly in the center, this top line where it comes up and goes over. I've got a little bit of extra volume right here. This corner isn't cut free. I could have cut this line over a little more and cut this in a little more to get it right perfect. Instead, I left material on both faces of this edge. And I did that on purpose because that means I can develop that edge as I cut it. And because I can develop it as I cut it to make this corner, I can keep the corner very secure and very sharp. If I went ahead and cut this all the way back to where this face dictated this face, that transition, you're likely to have a check in the corner. It's really hard. You can develop it with the corner of a chisel and erode it down instead of cutting it in, but you still could weaken that face. By doing it this way, I can cut that face, that corner away and reveal it and develop it as I go down, and that's a really good strategy to maintain control, to have nice strong corners. Now we've got some corners here that are starting to, they're all a little shaggy. They've all got to go back because none of this is perfectly to depth at this point. They're all very close, but when you do marble, we figure it's around the same number of billable hours to carve marble as it is to carve granite. The difference is that with marble, the stone comes off really fast, and then you have to finish it. And you put the time in with finishing techniques to surface it, whether you're using rifflers or rasps or stones or some type of abrasive. With granite, you finish everything with a chisel. So the stone comes off faster, but when you take the chisel off the stone, you're finished. And so at the end of the day, you still have about the same number of hours in a piece as you do. Doesn't matter if it's marble or if it's granite. You have a different consumables consideration. You basically, even if you can quote unquote carve marble faster, you can't finish it any faster than granite. So at the end of the day, you'll have around the same amount of time in both pieces in the identical piece, no matter what stone you're using, whether it's stone or marble. So, but as we cut this back, these planes give us a great way to maintain control. And right now, this will look doesn't look right compared to the model. And that's visual noise, because at this point, this facet is only half as big as this facet. And it really makes it look like you haven't cut it enough, and you haven't, but you're going to in a minute, so don't get distracted. Keep track of what you're doing and go in order. That's why having a model, that's why producing it in a very systematic process or method really works, because once you overcome this noise and transfer this, and this is tipped and this is faceted, where you're going to have another half a facet, and then you're going to have two full facets here. It's going to really make this thing pop. It's going to transform it a lot really fast. And so don't get anxious. Just keep going in order. But understand that sometimes in order to produce one detail, you may have to develop it from 2 or 3 other details you had to produce first. And then you leave that final detail instead of trying to cut that final detail at the beginning. That's a mistake. Let's cut some stone. I've mentioned this before in other spots, but I want to point it out here because it's really important. you have to remember what is going to be a finished face and what you're still going to work off. And this is about 3 1/8. So I've got about 1/8 of an inch, which means it's about a 1/16 of an inch on each face that I'm going to clean off. But as I lower this, these flats are going to be finished faces. And so as I cut this down, I have to be very careful that I don't take a chisel and cut a line at the bottom of it that may go into that face, because then I got to clean that face off to get rid of that witness mark. We talked about that at the intersections where the bar crosses the shaft. We were axing it down. So you just have to be really careful to develop that feature without cutting that feature. And that's what doing these corners like this, where they've got the overhang so it's fully supported. As we reduce this, we produce the corner, we produce that edge. We don't cut the edge per se right from the beginning, because by sinking a chisel straight into that and pushing it, you could weaken this edge, cause it to crumble, and then when you start dressing it, you're going to lose more than you want. So same thing here, tip this edge. I'll tip this front edge here down to this line, tip that to a 45 to right here, and then just waste that off. I've already started this side. But as you're cutting this, be careful not to cut into the face of something you got to save, because then you'll have to fix it later. You don't need to fix stuff, you need to cut it right in the first place. Once again, mark it where you need to cut. Mark your bottoms. Get a grip on this top. This is why having these planes to work with is so effective, is you've got all of this place to use for reference. If you just cut this off and we're just cutting this, just blowing it away, you'd have a real hard, you can measure from the end and drop a pendant, and I understand that, but this is more accurate. It's also more consistent because it gives you the dimensions to where they match going around. We've got this matched, we've got this matched. So we go down a layer and we got the next layer matched, and that way we don't have run out to where one end will have tip to it and the other one won't. It's easier to keep them straight. Now that these are all pushed back, I'm gonna go ahead and mark my center. You know, this is money. This is what we got to leave. Went ahead and marked these. This is how deep. This is 1/2 inch. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip this. I'm still up just a tiny bit right on that line. The top of this line is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to tip this from here to here, bevel that off to get that bevel. And what that's going to do is that's going to create another triangle. I mean, we're just going to bevel that down so that it try to match this tip as well. We're just going to cut that off to where it matches. Then after that's done, then we're going to waste this off and it'll pull those back in. And we'll probably do both of those steps at the same time while we're on one end, because it's getting to the point where we're almost done. And so instead of tipping it and turning it an extra full round of turns to do it a second time, I'm just going to tip these all four, and then I'll bevel them, and then I'll tip it, and then I'll bevel them. And then we've only got to go back here 1 more inch, cut this and bevel this to the interior, and we're good. So check it out. Smooth chisel, small machine. Go careful. leave this tall right here till the end, so you can pull that down. This is a little tall and this is a little tall. We want to be able to dress those and have them be perfect. One line, no double line. Okay, get them to just about match. And we're going to put a straight line down on there. The point is still buried in here a little bit because we got to reduce this down. So we're still okay. This line right here, can you see that right in the middle? That's the witness I've told you to be careful about. By being very careful, we can just dress it right off. Finish this one off camera. Just so, well, let me turn it so we can get this just right. I don't want to bump the camera. Go slow to create a nice intersection. Now let's take a look. So you got a really nice facet. This end is not cut tight. We still got to dress these corners off. We'll wrap that end up as we do this. We'll have to straighten these lines up at the end to make sure it's a nice straight line, that there's no wiggle in it, and it'll look fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them, and we'll be back to look at what's next. Go slow, do it right. Now it's really critical when you're doing this. It's more so the wider your tool gets, and this is something just in general, but on a job like this where you've got lots of flat surfaces, you can't fake a straight line or a flat surface. If you're working and you let the edge of that chisel, the corner, carry over into something else, you can gouge this face, you could break this edge, and then it's a problem. You know, you could potentially, if you had to save the job, you could sink this a little bit to pick up, but then you'd have to cut all of this all over again. And you'd do it without the references that you had, and that's not good. You're not getting paid to cut it twice. So be careful, go slow, and pay attention to where you're cutting and where your tool is all the time. Now all the ends are cut. Now, if you look, this is a good example right here. If you look right here, you can see that that line isn't perfect, okay? I'm not going to try to make it perfect with a chisel, because I can go back in with a stone when it's all open, and I can screw it up, and I can draw that center down very easily without risking pushing it down with a chisel. Because even if there's a soft spot on either side of it, I'll go up and I'll get all these faces, and I'll get them just right with none of the stones in the way. But now we've got to start making some decisions. I have to measure down 1 inch here and make a square cut. What I'm going to probably do is I'm going to get that laid out where that square cut's going to be, and not define it yet. I'll probably come out, if that's a 1 inch, I'll probably cut it close to here, set in the 45, I'll draw a cross line through here, start working this bevel. You're going to have to start removing material, and this is a good time to start working the stone with it laying on this face or on the back instead of standing on the edge. And so we'll have to decide just exactly what I'm going to do. And those ends are pretty cool. They'll end up photographing really well, and all of this, when we dress it with the brick, they'll be nice and sharp and they'll look really good. Go slow, do it right. Cool stuff. This should show pretty well. You can see I've got a little bit of tip where it runs out here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and work to screw these up, and then I'll be able to tune these lines and get things straight and start pushing this back. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set it in top and bottom, and then I'll match it across as I develop these sides, because getting this to agree, cutting it through, that's always a challenge with the penetration with a flat plane, is to get it to match. So I'll probably work it from both sides and in at the same time. This will be a little more tedious, but we'll get the best agreement that way. And I'll probably start by working this off I'm just going to go slow, and we'll make it really nice. This shows it really well. Only had to take just that's probably, I think, maybe a 16th, just to get that straightened up. See, I still got this witness I got to clean. You're going to learn where to leave stone and where to take it all off. Because some of these were harder to reach, I wasn't even concerned about them. That's why there's so much run out, especially on the bottom here and on this side over here. Remember I said, practice on the underside. Nobody's going to see that. So we're going to work on truing these up to get it all figured out. Then I can go ahead and do the more visible spaces. We'll get this to match and we'll work this back. It'll be really nice. Yeah, cut a margin on each side of this cross. Did the other side already, get ready. I wrap this side up. Then I can measure off my center. Set up my 3-inch bar and shaft. Because you're going to have to start cutting this mass away. And we want to preserve the mass as good as we can, as much as we can, in order to work into it, so we're less likely to break something. We got to start working off these. We'll do the top and then we'll do the bottom. We want to put as little stress on the thinner sections of the stone as we possibly can. That's the goal. So just keep working. Both sides, put a margin on each side, laid out the line. That's about just a little over 3 inches. This is 3 inches, and so I cut just outboard. And same thing on the back side here. So now I'm just going to start working from the top down. I'm going to cut this. Now you should be able to see I've got some run out right here where it flares out. Okay? It's also a little bit in, but by the time I true this up, and remember this face is still a little thick too, we'll be able to get this centered really well. And we'll dress these all off and get everything to match. You can cut them absolutely perfect in the beginning. I don't know. If you're good, do it. I think I'd rather be safe, leave myself a little bit of room where I've got to pull things in. And then as I tighten them up and sharpen all these lines, it'll get everything tight. And the best part about it is I won't end up under 3 inches, because if say I'm 3 1/16 in terms of dimension, he'll be happy. If I'm 2 15/16, they won't be, because this was a 3-inch cross originally, and they're going to want at least a 3-inch cross. Start taking the top off. Bigger machine. Avoid the temptation to take off a really big chunk, because what can happen, you'll blow this off and then you'll strike down here. So don't take big pieces. Work it off. into there so that if it does collapse, it gets structured instead of dissolved. You could take and use a diamond wheel, saw this in and break it out. I just don't have one mounted, and I'm just going to do this. This is just as quick. By the time I get it out, I think I'll be just as happy. I'm going to reduce this to about a 45. But over here where these corners where I need them, I'm going to go ahead and work this direction so I don't accidentally fracture something. Already did it on the back side. Put a stop cut along here, and I'll match these, and as soon as I get that reduced, I'll do this side so the stone stays balanced. You see I've got these corners beveled off, bulk, and now I'm just going to work this down from the top. You push on it here or here, it rocks. If I push on it straight down, I can stand on top of it. It's not going to go anywhere. It makes it safer working. So we're going to work down here. We're going to create these edges, do these 1-inch drop pieces. We've surrendered all this reference area. We have no more reference from here or here. Still have reference material here and here and on the joint on the very top, but we don't have any more on these pieces. So we're just going to road these down slowly. Each side basically we'll do, go down maybe ½ inch on one and ½ inch on the other to keep doing this matching concept. And then we'll get down to where we're 1 inch and we'll have our nice, and we'll try to get that end pulled together really tight. Then we can push this one in the same way, go in some more. And we'll work this down from the top as well till we have these sides all done, and then we can worry about beveling these as we go. Going to use a small machine for this. Just go careful. Great chisel. We're starting to develop this. Now if you look, you can see that this line here is just high. Okay, see there's a drop right there. This doesn't match. Don't worry about that yet. We're going to get these sides straight. We've got these lines all pretty good, but they all have to be finished. Don't finish this now, because if you dig that and you go too deep, you won't be able to get this one back. We've still got a little bit to push off here because we got that lip. So we still got some to trim off there and smooth that face up. See, we got a little line right there, so we've got to abrade that and get rid of that. So we've still got some work to do. So don't get too worried about having all these matched right now. Get these sides down and get them straight. So we've still got a little bit of run out. We're going to work that nice and straight, get this across, and we're going to do the other side down. We're just going to keep working them down to get them together. And then we'll get all these lines perfect at the end, because this doesn't even, there's even a gap right there. That line's got to come down, so these got to be fixed. Don't fix this yet on this corner. That's the wrong thing to focus on. And if you leave extra material right there, just in case you bump it, you've got something to surrender before you're at the end and there's nothing left to go. Keep cutting. Now that the bulk is off of the top here, I'm going to work this down to square it up. I'm also going to go ahead and clear this bottom plane off, try to get these good. Now we're to the point that things are going to have to be referenced off of landmarks that are already here. Get this 1 inch mark. We won't worry about cutting that until we get all this done. We want this face and this face to be very square, this face and this face to be very square to each other, and try to make them as parallel as possible. We want to eliminate visual noise, because if one of these is really wonky and way off at 90 degrees, it'll really be obvious. These are close to 90 degrees, even if these aren't quite parallel, as long as we can keep that, we want it to be as close as possible. But, you know, perfection is perfection, and it doesn't always turn out that way. Sometimes you're just, you know, a tiny bit off. Go for perfection, try to make it really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and square this bottom up, and we'll get these tuned up really careful. We got to do the same underneath, and it'll probably be more challenging to trim this out underneath than it was on top, where this is easy to reach. So just keep cutting stone. That top squared off pretty well. It's looking pretty good. Now we'll tune this up. Now remember, the only part of this that's going to be there or remain is this 1-inch strip right down the middle and here. So I'm going to work to tune those up really, really well at the very end. That's what's going to be nice. We'll get that wrapped up and get all this. Right now I want to make sure I don't have any gouges or digs in there. I've got it very close. Got to mark this in, and we probably can go ahead and cut these bevels while we're at it. I don't think it really makes any difference, because I want to get everything done that I can before I start evacuating more stone down here. We've got to figure out what the bottom's going to be, because the original bottom was just gone. So we want to put a little detail, probably similar to this. Whether we have a facet like a 45 on top and then going down, we'll have to decide how that goes, and I think that'll look really good. So pretty happy so far. Got some bells. But we'll go ahead and wrap this video up and come back and work on the cross some more in the next video. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio. I'm a granite sculptor carving a really cool cross, and I think I'm figured out the name of this cross. I'm going to do a little bit more research, but we'll get it posted with a virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.